What happens when a man who has everything forgets where he came from? Morgan Thorne, a self-made CEO, stood on top of the world. He had $1 billion company, the respect of the city, and a quiet, supportive wife, Amelia, whom he treated as little more than a background decoration. At his own gala, he mocked her simplicity, her lack of ambition, unaware that her silence wasn't weakness. It was a cage. He was about to find out that his quiet wife's family wasn't just wealthy. They were the ones who owned the cage. This is the story of how one arrogant man's greatest triumph became his public execution, all because he underestimated the woman beside him. The penthouse smelled of glass cleaner and old money. A sterile combination that Amelia Thorne had never gotten used to. From their 80th floor apartment overlooking Central Park, New York, was a silent, glittering map. It was a view that cost more than most countries' GDP, and tonight it felt like a prison. Amelia was adjusting the clasp on a simple pearl necklace. The pearls were real, of course. They had belonged to her grandmother. They were understated, glowing with a soft, creamy luster against the dark navy silk of her Brunello Cucinelli gown. It was a dress that cost $12,000, but it was designed to look like it cost nothing at all. That was the way Amelia preferred it. Quiet, unassuming. "Are you still wearing that?" Morgan Thorne's voice boomed from the dressing room. He didn't enter her space. He projected into it. He emerged, already fastening the buttons on a ludicrously flashy Tom Ford blazer. It was velvet with a pattern that seemed to shimmer with its own importance. "It's a gala, Amelia, not a funeral," he said, adjusting his $100,000 Richard Mille watch. "My company is receiving the Pinnacle Award. I'm the man of the hour. Can you at least look like you're married to the man of the hour and not the help?" Amelia's fingers paused on the pearl. She met his eyes in the reflection of the floor-to-ceiling window. He was handsome, she supposed. 10 years ago he had been electric. When she first met him, he was just Morgan, a brilliant, hungry engineer with a blueprint and a dream. She had fallen in love with that hunger, that raw ambition. She had believed in him. Now that hunger had been satiated, replaced by a gluttonous, swaggering arrogance. He was CEO Morgan Thorne, the titan of Thorne Dynamics, a man who believed his own press releases. "I like this dress, Morgan," she said, her voice soft as always. "You like it?" He scoffed, walking over to the bar to pour himself a 2-finger measure of Macallan 30. "It's plain. It's beige. Just like everything you choose. Look at Isabella Vance. She'll be there tonight. She'll be wearing Versace or Schiaparelli. She'll look like she belongs." Amelia's stomach tightened. Isabella Vance, the new COO of his company. A woman with shark's eyes and a resume as sharp as her stilettos. Amelia had seen the way Morgan looked at Isabella. She had seen the late-night texts he thought he was hiding the board meetings in Zurich. "I don't want to look like Isabella," Amelia said, turning to face him. "I want to look like myself." Morgan drained the scotch in one gulp and slammed the crystal tumbler down. "That's the problem, isn't it? Yourself is boring. Yourself is this quiet, mousy little thing that makes people wonder how I ended up with you. You're dragging me down, Amelia. Tonight, just smile. Stand next to me. Look impressed, and don't talk to the reporters. You always manage to say the wrong, simple-minded thing." He didn't wait for a reply. He grabbed his phone. "The car is downstairs. Chloe is already there." Chloe, his 25-year-old executive assistant, who also Amelia knew booked his business trips with Isabella. The entire company was a nest of his enablers. Amelia took a deep breath the scent of expensive whiskey and his even more expensive cologne stinging her nostrils. She remembered a tiny apartment in Brooklyn 10 years ago. They were eating cheap pizza on the floor, mapping out his business plan on a napkin. He had kissed her and said, "It's you and me against the world, Ames. You're the only one who gets me." She had funded him, not with her family's money. Not yet. She had liquidated a small trust her grandmother left her, a starter fund of $1 million. She gave it to him, telling him it was an inheritance she'd saved. He'd been so grateful. He'd called her his angel investor. Now he called her beige. She picked up her simple clutch. He was right about one thing. Tonight was his night, his greatest triumph, and she knew with a certainty that settled in her bones like ice that it would also be his last. She had been patient. She had been quiet. She had given him every chance to be the man she married. But that man was dead. "I'm ready," she said, her voice betraying nothing. As she walked past him, he grabbed her wrist, his grip too tight. "And Amelia. That necklace, it's quaint, but it makes you look like your grandmother. Try to live in this century. I'm building the future, and you're stuck in the past." He let her go, wiping his hand on his pants, as if her skin had left a residue. Amelia simply looked at the red mark on her wrist, then at the pearls. Her grandmother, she thought, had owned shipping lines. She had negotiated trade deals that built nations, and she had warned Amelia about men like Morgan. "You're right, Morgan," she said, walking into the elevator. "The past has a way of catching up." He didn't hear her. He was already on the phone, laughing at something Chloe said. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was unrecognizable. Thorn Dynamics had rented out the entire Temple of Dender wing for the Pinnacle Award gala. The ancient temple was bathed in electric blue light. The company's logo projected onto the reflecting pool. It was the definition of hubris, a tech company's logo plastered over 2 millennia of history. Morgan was in his element. He strode into the room like a Roman emperor, his hand not in Amelia's, but on the small of her back, guiding her like livestock. Cameras flashed. Reporters, mostly from fawning business journals he'd courted, shouted his name. "Mr. Thorne, a word about the quantum leap AI. Morgan over here. How does it feel to be the king of New York?" He lapped it up, giving sound bites about disruption and legacy. Amelia stood beside him, her smile a perfect polished mask. She was the ideal prop, the silent, adoring wife. He would occasionally pat her hand, a gesture of patronizing ownership. "She's my rock," he told a reporter from Forbes. "Couldn't do it without her. Simple, steady support." As soon as the main scrum of reporters dissipated, he dropped the act. "Go get us some champagne," he ordered, not looking at her, his eyes already scanning the room for more important people. Amelia felt the familiar sting of humiliation. She was the wife of the guest of honor, being sent for drinks like an intern. She navigated the crowd, a sea of sequins, black ties, and avaricious smiles. She saw Page Six's most notorious columnist, Penelope Hayes, watching her, a predatory glint in her eye. Amelia turned away, making her way to the bar. And then she saw her, Isabella Vance. She was not wearing Versace. She was wearing a custom blood-red Alexander McQueen gown that looked as if it had been sculpted from molten glass. It was audacious, stunning, and screamed for attention. She was standing with a circle of billionaires, men in their 60s and 70s, all of them leaning in, captivated. Morgan saw her at the same moment. He left the group he was talking to mid-sentence and strode over to Isabella. Amelia watched frozen from across the room. He didn't just greet her. He embraced her. His hand slid down the exposed, corseted back of her dress, lingering far too long, far too low. He kissed her cheek, but his lips brushed her ear as he whispered something. Isabella threw her head back and laughed a sound like breaking champagne flutes. She put her hand on his chest, her red nails a stark contrast to his white shirt. They were not hiding. They were gloating. This was the true reveal. This wasn't just an affair. It was a succession. He was presenting his new queen to the court, while the old one was sent to fetch drinks. Amelia felt a cold, sharp anger, unlike anything she'd felt before. It wasn't the hot, messy rage of jealousy. It was the precise, cold fury of a CEO watching an asset being mismanaged. An asset she owned. He's a fool, isn't he? Amelia turned. A man in his late 60s with kind eyes and an impeccably tailored Keaton suit was standing beside her at the bar. He had a slight Dutch accent. I beg your pardon, Amelia said, composing herself. Morgan Thorne, the man said, accepting a glass of seltzer from the bartender. He's a fool. He thinks this... He motioned to the blue lights, the noise, the obsequious crowds, is power. This is just noise. Power. Power is quiet. The way you are. Amelia studied him. He looked vaguely familiar. Have we met? We have not. But I know of you, or rather I know of your family. The Van Houtens. Amelia's blood went cold. No one in New York knew her family name. It was the one thing she had guarded with absolute secrecy. Her father, Constantine Van Houten, was the head of Ethelred Global, a private equity and technology firm so large it didn't bother with stock markets. They didn't build companies. They bought the countries those companies operated in. They were the definition of quiet power. You have me at a disadvantage, Amelia said, her voice guarded. The man smiled. My apologies. My name is Peter Janssen. I sit on the board of Ethelred. Amelia's mask slipped. Peter, Uncle Peter, she said, using the familiar Dutch term. He laughed. In the flesh. Your father sends his regards. He was concerned. When he heard Thorne Dynamics was being honored, he grew worried about the exposure. Your father hates exposure. He finds it vulgar. What are you doing here? Amelia whispered, as the crowd around them roared with laughter at some unseen joke. Observing. We have significant concerns about Mr. Thorne's recent acquisitions. He's been moving money, a lot of money, into ventures that seem fictitious. We were running a quiet audit, but then your father told me to stand by. He said you would give the signal when you were ready. Amelia looked back across the room. Morgan was now holding Isabella's hand. He had pulled her onto a small, roped-off dais by the temple, showing her the view, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. They were posing for a Vogue photographer. Amelia turned back to Peter Janssen. She took a sip of the champagne she had finally been handed. It tasted like ash. Tell my father, she said, her voice so low, Peter had to lean in. The signal is given. I'm done. Send the team. Send Mr. Locke. Peter's kind eyes hardened instantly. The friendly uncle was gone, replaced by the Ethelred board member. They are on a plane from Geneva. They will land at Teterboro at 6 a.m. Mr. Locke has the files. All of them. Thank you, Peter. It is a shame, Amelia, he said, patting her hand. You truly loved him. Yes, Amelia said, watching her husband kiss his mistress on the cheek for the camera. I did. But he killed the man I loved. The man left standing is just a liability. She turned and began walking back toward her husband, the prop wife returning to her post. But the mask was no longer one of weakness. It was one of war. The clinking of glasses ceased. A spotlight as harsh and white as an interrogation lamp found the stage. The president of the New York Business Council, a man Amelia knew Morgan despised, but had paid handsomely for this honor, was at the podium. "And now," the president bellowed, "a man who needs no introduction, a man who truly represents the future of American innovation. He took a simple idea, and with nothing but grit, determination, and his own sheer genius, built a global empire. The titan of tech, the genius of Thorne Dynamics. My friend Morgan Thorne." The applause was thunderous. Morgan stood up, buttoning his velvet jacket. He looked at Isabella, who blew him a small, conspiratorial kiss. Then, as an afterthought, he glanced at Amelia, still standing beside his chair. He gave her a sharp nod, a silent command. "Stand up. Applaud for me." Amelia rose to her feet, her hands moving together in a slow, measured clap. Her face was a perfect portrait of serene, wifely pride. Inside, she was a block of Antarctic ice. Morgan bounded onto the stage, soaking in the adulation. He shook the president's hand, grabbed the heavy crystal award, and held it aloft like a conquering hero. The cameras flashed, capturing the image of triumph he had so desperately craved. Thank you," he said, his voice aided by a microphone filling the ancient hall. "Wow, what a night." He set the award down, leaning into the podium with a practiced, casual arrogance. "They say I'm a self-made man," he began, his voice dripping with false humility. "And they're right." Amelia watched clinically. She saw Peter Janssen across the room, by the main exit, watching Morgan like an entomologist studies a particularly distasteful insect. "I didn't come from money," Morgan continued, a lie he'd told so often, he now believed it. He came from a perfectly comfortable upper-middle-class family in Connecticut. "I didn't have a trust fund. I didn't have a family name to open doors for me." He paused for effect, letting the lie settle over the crowd of trust fund babies and heirs, all of whom nodded in solemn agreement. "I built Thorne Dynamics from nothing. From an idea on a napkin, Amelia's napkin in her apartment paid for by her trust. I did it with sweat. I did it with 100-hour work weeks. I did it by being smarter and working harder than everyone else in this room." A few nervous titters. He had insulted them, but he was the man with the award, so it was acceptable. "People told me my quantum leap AI was impossible. They said it couldn't be done. But I don't believe in impossible. I eat impossible for breakfast." The applause was weaker this time. His ego was beginning to choke the room. "But," he said, softening his tone, "no man is an island. You need a team of killers, a team that sees your vision. People like my brilliant COO, Isabella Vance." He pointed to her. Isabella stood, bathing in the secondary spotlight. She was the future Mrs. Thorne, and everyone in the room suddenly understood. The gossip was true. Amelia felt the lens of Penelope Hayes' camera swing from Isabella back to her, zooming in, searching for the crack for the tear. Amelia gave her nothing. She just smiled the same placid, empty smile. "And," Morgan said, turning back to the podium, his voice taking on a new condescending tone, "you also need support at home. Someone to handle the other things. The simple things." The room went quiet. This was not on the prompter. "My wife Amelia is here tonight." He gestured vaguely in her direction. The spotlight swung, catching her. Amelia was blinded, but she did not flinch. She was alone on an island of light, every eye in the room on her. "Now Amelia, she doesn't understand this world," Morgan said, a small, chuckling laugh in his voice. "She wouldn't know a stock option from a grocery coupon. Her world is small, simple. She's a quiet soul." Amelia could hear the whispers. How embarrassing. Did he really just say that she looks like a ghost? Morgan was on a roll high on his own power, emboldened by the award and the presence of his mistress. He was swatting away his past. "She once asked me why I work so hard. She said, 'Morgan, why can't we just, I don't know, open a small bookstore in Vermont?'" He laughed, and a few sycophants in the front row laughed with him. "A bookstore," he boomed. "I'm here building the future, and she's worried about paperbacks." He looked directly at Amelia, the spotlight creating a tunnel between them. He was not thanking her. He was dismissing her. He was publicly, brutally, and unequivocally telling her and the world that she was nothing. "But I want to thank her," he said, the final poisoned cherry on top. "I want to thank her for her simple presence, for reminding me that not everyone is built for the fight. Not everyone is built to matter. Her quiet support is a comfort, like a nice warm blanket, or a pet, maybe." The silence in the room was now deafening. Even his supporters were cringing. This wasn't a speech. It was a character assassination. Morgan, finally sensing he'd gone too far, tried to recover. "So, here's to Thorn Dynamics. Here's to the future." He raised his award. The applause was scattered, pathetic. Amelia Thorne stood in the spotlight, her face unreadable. The smile had not wavered, but her eyes, had anyone been close enough to see, them were no longer the eyes of a wife. They were the eyes of a creditor. She did not wait for the spotlight to move. She did not wait for the music to swell. In the ringing silence of her husband's failed ovation, Amelia Thorne turned. She did not look at him. She did not look at Isabella. She simply walked. She walked out from the table, her steps silent on the thick carpet. She walked past the table of fawning journalists, past the shocked board members, past her husband's open-mouthed, furious face still trapped on stage. She walked straight toward the main exit, where Peter Janssen was holding the door. The cameras found her. The flash, flash, flash of Penelope Hayes's camera was the only sound like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence. Morgan Live microphone, still pinned to his lapel, hissed into the void. "Amelia, Amelia, what the hell do you think you're doing? Get back here." But she was gone. The heavy oak doors of the Temple of Dender wing clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing in the silent, humiliated room. Morgan Thorne, man of the hour, was left alone on stage, his award in hand, exposed as a fool. Amelia did not take the limo. The chauffeur, a man who had driven her for 5 years and always treated her with a quiet kindness, looked confused as she bypassed the gleaming Bentley. "Mrs. Thorne, the car is this way." "I'm not going home tonight, Robert," she said, pressing a $100 bill into his hand. "Take the rest of the night off. I believe Mr. Thorne will be detained." She hailed a yellow cab, a move so foreign to her current life that it felt like a rebellion. "Where to, lady?" the cabbie asked, not looking back. She gave him the address. Not a hotel, not the airport. She gave him the address of a discreet, impossibly exclusive building on the Upper East Side, one that didn't appear on any maps, the Ethelred Consulate. It was a private residential building owned by her family's firm, reserved for visiting executives, and in this case, family members in need of a fortress. Her phone began to explode. It was Morgan. One text. "Where are you? You a second. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed me." A third. "Get back here. Now. We have to do damage control." A fourth. "Isabella is furious. You ruined my night." Then the calls started. He rang and rang and rang. She watched the screen, the name Morgan, flashing with angry pulsing light. She let it ring until it went to voicemail. Voicemail 1. "Amelia, pick up the phone. I am not playing this game. You made me look like an absolute idiot. Whatever little tantrum this is, it's over. Get back to the penthouse. We will talk." She deleted it. The cab pulled up to a grey stone building with no markings, only a heavy, polished black door. 2 men in dark, severe suits stepped out of the shadows before she had even paid. They were her family's security. "Welcome home, Ms. Van Houten," one of them said, opening the cab door. The name Ms. Van Houten felt like a splash of cold, clean water. She entered the lobby. It was silent, decorated with a single massive Mark Rothko painting, and nothing else. Her father's taste. Another call from Morgan. She let it go to voicemail. Voicemail 2. His voice was different. The rage was gone, replaced by a tight, controlled panic. The reporter Penelope Hayes must have published her article already. The headline was probably "Brutal Thorne's Quiet Wife Walks Out on Humiliating Speech." "Amelia, listen. I don't know what got into you. I was joking. It was just a little roast. You know, for the crowd. You're too sensitive, you're overreacting, but you're making a scene. The board is asking questions. You're making the company look unstable. You're making me look unstable. Call me. We can fix this. Just call me." She deleted it. She was shown to a suite that was larger than her first apartment with Morgan. A fire was already crackling in the hearth. On a heavy mahogany desk, a secure satellite phone was waiting. She picked it up and dialed a number from memory. It rang once. "Amelia." Her father's voice, Constantin van Houten, was calm and clear from Geneva. "Father," she said, "Peter called me. You are safe." "I am safe. I'm at the consulate." "Good. Mr. Locke and the team's plane is wheels down at Teterboro. They are refueling and will be with you in 90 minutes. They have the preliminary audit. It's worse than we thought, Amelia." "What did he do?" she asked, sinking into a leather chair that smelled of old books and power. "He didn't just borrow against your initial investment. He's been defrauding his own company. Systematically. For 2 years. He's been using Thorne Dynamics as a personal piggy bank to fund a series of personal projects with Ms. Vance. So the company is a shell." "Not yet," her father said, his voice hard. "The core technology, the quantum leap AI, is sound. Brilliant even. That's the asset. But the company's financials, they're a work of fiction. He's been cooking the books to inflate the valuation for a new round of funding. He was planning to take the new money, cash out his original shares, and leave the new investors holding an empty bag." Amelia felt sick. He wasn't just leaving me. He was leaving everyone. Yes, a true sociopath. He thinks he's the smartest man in the room. Amelia looked into the fire. He's not even the smartest man in his own marriage. A rare, dry chuckle from her father. Indeed. Mr. Locke has the full package. The wire transfers, the offshore accounts in the Caymans, the documentation of his relationship with Ms. Vance, which I am sorry to say was being funded by corporate accounts. He bought her a condominium at 15 Central Park West with R&D money. Amelia closed her eyes. The humiliation was deep, but the rage was deeper. "What is the plan?" she asked. "Locke will present two options, a quiet divorce and his silent removal, or a public crucifixion. The choice is yours, my dear. It is after all your company." "My company? Of course. Your $1 million angel investment. That was from the Van Houten Generation Trust. It came with our standard founder's clause. You are not just an investor, Amelia. You are the primary stakeholder. He just never read the fine print. He was too excited by the money." Amelia almost laughed. The ultimate irony. He'd called her simple, and he had signed his entire empire over to her before he'd even built it. Her personal phone buzzed again. A new text from Morgan. "Amelia, I'm at the penthouse. Where are you?" "This isn't funny. I've been trying to log into our joint accounts. The access is denied." "What did you do?" "Amelia, pick up the phone. My corporate card was just declined." She smiled a thin, cold smile. Mr. Locke's team was already working. The cage door was swinging shut. "Amelia." Her father's voice came over the satellite line. "I'm here, Father." "What is your decision?" "A public crucifixion," Amelia said without hesitation. He wanted the spotlight. He wanted to be the king of New York. "I'm going to make him famous." "Very good," Constantine said. "Locke will meet you at Thorn Dynamics, 9 a.m. I suggest you get some rest. Tomorrow, you become CEO." Morgan Thorne had not slept. He sat in the dark penthouse, the glittering New York skyline, now mocking him. He had spent the night alternating between blind panic and narcissistic rage. He'd called his CFO. No answer. He'd called his bank. They cited a security freeze. He'd called Isabella, who had screamed at him about the Page 6 article, "Thorne's temper, tantrum wife, flees mistress exposed," and then hung up on him. By 8 a.m., he was a wreck, pacing the marble floors in his $5,000 suit from the night before. He was in the middle of composing a furious, threatening email to Amelia's simple middle-class parents. In Holland, he'd never met them, and she'd never corrected his assumption when his secretary, Chloe, called, her voice trembling. "Mr. Thorne, you need to come in. Now." "What is it?" "What's the new crisis?" he snapped. "There are people here, in the main conference room. They said they have a 9 a.m. meeting with you, but it's not on your calendar." "What people? Get rid of them," he barked. "Sir, I don't think I can. There are 6 of them, and Mrs. Thorne is with them." Morgan froze. Amelia. She'd come crawling back. She was here to apologize, to smooth things over. A wave of relief quickly followed by anger washed over him. She would pay for this humiliation. "Right," he said, straightening his tie. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He strode into the lobby of Thorn Dynamics, his company, his empire, at 8:52 a.m. The employees stared at him, whispering. The Page 6 article was on every screen. He ignored them, marching straight to the executive floor, to the glass-walled main conference room. He threw the doors open and stopped. Amelia was there, as Chloe had said. But she was not the woman from last night. The quiet navy blue silk was gone. She was wearing a razor-sharp custom Armani pantsuit in a severe charcoal grey. Her hair was pulled back into a tight, formidable chignon. Her quaint pearls were gone, replaced by a single modern diamond pendant that he knew instinctively cost more than his car. She was standing at the head of the table, not sitting, and she was not alone. Flanking her were 6 people. They all wore the same uniform, dark, impossibly expensive suits and expressions of utter reptilian coldness. They looked, Morgan thought, with a jolt like executioners. Amelia? Morgan began, trying to summon his bravado. This little stunt is over. You've had your fun. You made your point. Now tell your friends to leave. We have a company to save. Amelia looked at him. Her eyes were empty of any emotion he recognized. They're not my friends, Morgan, she said, her voice not soft but clear and projecting like a CEO's. They're my lawyers. An older man with silver hair and a face that looked carved from granite stepped forward. He placed a heavy leather-bound portfolio on the table. Mr. Thorne, the man said. His voice was a low, precise rumble. My name is Harrison Locke of Kensington and Locke in Geneva and New York. We represent Mrs. Amelia Van Houten Thorne. Or, as you may know her, Amelia Van Houten. Morgan blinked. Van Houten. What's that your maiden name? Who cares? Mr. Locke allowed a small, cold smile to touch his lips. Mr. Thorne, are you familiar with our client, Ethelred Global? Morgan's blood turned to ice water. Everyone knew Ethelred. They were the shadow bank of the world, a private multi-trillion-dollar firm that bought and sold governments before breakfast. They were a myth, a boogeyman for Forbes articles. What does Ethelred have to do with this? He stammered. Amelia, Mr. Locke said, gesturing to her, is Amelia Van Houten. Her father is Constantine Van Houten, the chairman and sole proprietor of Ethelred Global. Her family is Ethelred. Morgan looked from Locke to Amelia, his mind refusing to process the information. You told me your family owned a tulip farm. A common misconception, Amelia said, her voice cutting. My great-grandmother bred a rare tulip. The patent for that tulip was the seed money for the firm in 1888. You assumed simple. You never asked. But, Morgan was sputtering, a drowning man, searching for a life raft. Mitt Thorne. Locke continued tapping the portfolio. Let's get to the agenda. This is a petition for divorce. He slid one document across the table. A divorce. Morgan laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. You'll get nothing. The prenup is ironclad. You signed it. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. And you, my dear, have nothing. On the contrary, Amelia said, I have everything. Mr. Locke slid a second document over. This, Mr. Thorne, is the original seed funding agreement for Thorne Dynamics, the anonymous angel investment of $1 million you received 10 years ago. It was, in fact, an investment from the Van Houten Generation Trust, registered to Amelia. Locke pointed to a paragraph on page 40. And this is the Founder's Clause you signed without reading. It stipulates that in the event of gross negligence, criminal misconduct, or a morality violation, such as, say, a very public documented affair, the primary stakeholder, Ms. Van Houten, has the right to assume majority control and voting rights of the entire company. Instantly. Morgan stared at the paper. He remembered the agreement. He'd been so desperate for the cash he'd barely glanced at it. You tricked me, he whispered. You tricked yourself, Amelia replied. You assumed I was stupid. You assumed I was poor. You built your entire life on a lie, Morgan. The lie that you were the smartest man in the room. Suddenly the conference room doors burst open. Isabella Vance marched, in her face a mask of rage. Morgan, what is going on? My corporate cards are shut off. Security won't let me into my office, and who the hell are these people? She stopped when she saw Amelia, who was now smiling. A genuine, terrifying smile. Miss Vance. Perfect timing, Amelia said. Please join us. We were just getting to your part. Isabella Vance looked from Amelia's cold smile to Morgan's ghost white face. Her bravado faltered. She had walked into an ambush. Mr. Locke, Amelia prompted, taking a seat at the head of the table as if it were her throne. Please continue. Ms. Vance, Mr. Locke said, not even looking at her. He addressed the file. We have also filed a suit against you personally for conspiracy to commit fraud and for misappropriation of corporate funds. Fraud? Isabella shrieked, clutching her Hermes Birkin bag. That's insane. I'm the COO. I saved this company's Q3. You looted this company, a new voice said. It was one of the other lawyers, a young, sharp woman who opened a different file. We have here the wire transfer authorizations for $1.7 million approved by you, Mr. Thorne, and countersigned by you, Ms. Vance, to a shell corporation called IV Global Solutions. This shell corporation is registered in the Cayman Islands. Its sole proprietor is Isabella Vance. Isabella staggered, gripping the back of a chair. The lawyer continued, her voice a monotone dirge. This $1.7 million was diverted from the R&D budget for the Quantum Leap project. It was then used 3 days later as a down payment on a condominium at 15 Central Park West. Your condominium, Ms. Vance. Morgan stared at Isabella. You told me that was family money. Isabella's face contorted with rage. You told me to handle it. You told me you deserved a bonus for the stress. I didn't tell you to steal, Morgan roared, a cornered animal. Oh, but you did, Amelia said, her voice cutting through the argument. You just preferred not to know the details. This is... Morgan was breathing hard. This is a private matter. A disagreement between executives. You can't just take my company. Wrong, Mr. Locke said. The $1.7 million is just the beginning. The tip of the iceberg, as they say. Our forensic audit, which has been running for 6 months, has uncovered a systemic criminal enterprise. He nodded to his team. They began placing more documents on the table. Stacks and stacks of them. You, Mr. Thorne, Locke said, have been running 2 sets of books, one for your shareholders and one for yourself. You have systematically inflated your revenue reports by 40% for 3 quarters in an attempt to artificially inflate your valuation ahead of a new funding round. That's a lie, Morgan shouted. Is it? Amelia asked. You told your board you had secured a $300 million contract with the Department of Defense, but you didn't. You secured a meeting. Our team spoke with the Pentagon this morning. They were very interested to hear about your fraudulent claims. Oh, God, Morgan whispered, collapsing into a chair. This was beyond the divorce. This was prison. You see, Morgan, Amelia said, leaning forward. You thought I was a simple, quiet wife, but I'm a Van Houten. We don't just invest, we monitor. My family's firm, Ethelred, has owned the bank in the Caymans you've been using for your shell companies for over 50 years. We didn't just find your transactions, we processed them. This was the final blow, the reveal that he had never, not for 1 second, been in control. He had been a mouse in a maze, and the woman he'd mocked as a pet had been the one designing it. What do you want? Morgan finally whimpered. He looked at Amelia, his eyes wide with terror. Money. You want money, take it. Take it all. Just don't do this. Don't send me to jail. Please, Amelia Ames. I love you. Last night was a mistake. I was drunk. I was stressed. He was trying to crawl back. Isabella Vance watched him, her face a mask of pure disgust. You pathetic worm, she hissed. Quiet, Miss Vance. Mr. Locke snapped. You are in enough trouble. Amelia stood up and walked to the glass window, looking down at the city. Her city. You don't get to use that name. She said, her back to him. You don't get to Ames me. You want to know what I want. She turned around. Her eyes were burning. Last night you stood on a stage and you called me simple. You called me beige. You mocked me for dreaming of a bookstore. You said I didn't matter. You and your mistress, you stood there and laughed at me. You thought you were kings. You thought you were untouchable. She walked slowly, deliberately back to the table. I don't want your money, Morgan. I have money. I don't want your apology. It's worthless. She placed her hands flat on the mahogany. I want the company. I want the penthouse. I want the legacy you thought you were building. And you will have nothing. You wanted to be a self-made man. Well, I'm unmaking you. You can't, he whispered. As of 8:00 a.m. this morning, Mr. Locke announced, acting as majority stakeholder, Ms. Van Houten called an emergency board meeting. The Ethelred board members who you didn't know were board members have voted. You, Mr. Thorne, are removed as CEO and chairman effective immediately. Ms. Vance, your position as COO is terminated also effective immediately. Both of you are under investigation by the SEC and the Southern District of New York. We have already delivered our findings to them. No, Isabella whimpered. Your career is over, Amelia said. Your condo is being seized as an asset of the company you stole from. And you, Morgan, Amelia said, your shares. They're worthless. The founder's clause, you violated, reverts them all to me. The prenup, it's void. It was predicated on good faith, which you violated with criminal fraud. You don't even have enough money left to pay for a lawyer to fight this. Morgan was silent. He just stared at the table, a completely broken man. Security. Amelia called out, her voice sharp. The conference room doors opened. This time, it wasn't the building's security. It was 2 uniformed NYPD officers and 2 federal agents. Morgan Thorne, Isabella Vance, one of the agents said. You're both under arrest. The scene in the hallway of Thorne Dynamics was one of silent, stunned chaos. As the officers cuffed Morgan, he finally looked at Amelia, his face a grotesque mask of confusion and betrayal. Why? He whispered as they read him his rights. 10 years, Amelia. Why was it all a lie? Amelia walked up to him close enough that only he could hear her. It wasn't a lie when I met you, she said, her voice a low, painful truth. I loved you, Morgan. I loved that brilliant, hungry man in the Brooklyn apartment. But you killed him. You let your ego and your greed kill him. The man standing here, I don't know him, and I will not mourn him." "Amelia, please," he begged, as they started to pull him away. "Goodbye, Morgan," she said, and turned her back. Isabella Vance was more defiant. "You think you've won?" she spat at Amelia as they cuffed her. "You'll never be what he wanted. You're a cold, empty bitch." Amelia didn't even look at her. "Mr. Locke," she said, "ensure Ms. Vance's full cooperation with the authorities. She may be able to reduce her sentence by testifying against him." Isabella's face went slack with a new dawning horror. Amelia had not only destroyed them, she was now pitting them against each other. The elevator doors pinged open. A crowd of employees had gathered their phones out, recording the King of New York being led away in handcuffs. And just as the doors opened, none other than Penelope Hayes, the Page 6 columnist, stepped out, her photographer in tow. "Mr. Thorne, Miss Vance." Hayes shouted, her camera flashing, capturing the ultimate image of their downfall. "Is it true Ethelred Global is taking over? Is it true you're being arrested for fraud?" Morgan and Isabella flinched from the lights, humiliated, broken, and exposed. The elevator doors closed. The hallway was silent. Every employee was staring at Amelia, the quiet wife, who now stood at the center of the storm. Amelia turned to the crowd. Her face was not triumphant. It was calm, serious, and in complete control. "Good morning," she said, her voice projecting across the open-plan office. "My name is Amelia Van Houten. As of 9:05 a.m., I am the acting CEO of this company. I know this is a shock. I know you have questions. What you just saw was the end of a long and painful investigation into gross financial mismanagement by Mr. Thorne and Ms. Vance." She looked at them, meeting their eyes. "They stole from this company. They stole from you. They stole your R&D funds, they lied about your successes, and they put all of your jobs at risk." She paused, letting it sink in. "That ends today. Thorne Dynamics," she continued, "is at its heart a brilliant idea. The Quantum Leap AI is revolutionary, and you, the engineers, the designers, the support staff, you are the true value of this company, not the man who just left in handcuffs." She walked toward them, her lawyers remaining in the background. "My family's firm, Ethelred Global, is assuming all financial backing. As of this moment, this company is solvent. Your paychecks are secure. Your jobs are secure. The future we were promised is real." A sigh of collective relief went through the room. "But we have work to do," Amelia said, her voice hardening. "We have to undo the damage. We have to rebuild the trust. I will be holding an all-hands meeting in the main auditorium at 2 p.m. I will answer every question you have. But for now, I want you to get back to work. I want you to show me the brilliant company you are underneath the lies." She nodded to Chloe, the young assistant who had been pale and trembling. "Chloe, please come to the conference room. Bring me the real financials, not the ones Mr. Thorne gave the board. The real ones." Chloe, seeing a lifeline, nodded, her eyes wide. "Yes, Ms. Van Houten. Right away." Amelia turned and walked back into the conference room. Mr. Locke and his team were already packing their briefcases. "A clean execution, Mr. Locke," Amelia said, pouring herself a glass of water. "Indeed, Ms. Van Houten," Locke replied. "The SEC will handle it from here. We will, of course, manage the divorce proceedings and the asset seizure. The penthouse should be clear by this evening." "Thank you, Harrison," she said. Locke paused at the door. Your father will be very proud. You are, as he said, a true Van Houten." "No," Amelia said, looking out the window at the CEO's view. "I'm just Amelia, and I'm finally building my own future." The 2 p.m. all-hands meeting was packed. The auditorium was buzzing, not with fear, but with a strange electric anticipation. Amelia walked onto the stage alone. No lawyers, no family. She wore the same charcoal suit, a symbol of new stable power. She stood at the simple podium, and the room went silent. "Thank you for coming," she began. "As I said this morning, my name is Amelia Van Houten, and I am your new CEO. And I am not going to waste your time with corporate platitudes." She looked out at the faces. "For the last 2 years, you have been working for a man who did not respect you. He respected your output, but he did not respect you. He took your genius, packaged it, and sold it as his own. And then he had the audacity to steal the profits of your labor. That era is over. Today," she said, "I have done 2 things. First, I have dissolved the office of the CEO as you knew it. All of the executives complicit in Mr. Thorne's schemes have been terminated." A wave of applause. "Second," she continued, "I have taken the $1.7 million recovered from Ms. Vance's condominium and the additional $22 million we have already recovered from Mr. Thorne's hidden accounts, and I am not putting it into an executive bonus pool. I am putting it back into this company. Effective immediately, the R&D budget for Quantum Leap is quadrupled. And, effective on your next paycheck, every single employee here, from the janitorial staff to the senior engineers, will receive a 10% bonus as hazard pay for surviving the previous administration." The room exploded. It wasn't just applause. It was a standing, roaring ovation. People were cheering, crying, hugging. Amelia let them cheer. She let the toxic energy of the last few years burn off. "But this isn't just about money," she shouted over the noise, and they quieted down. "It's about respect. This is no longer a disruptor company built on ego. We are going to be a legacy company built on integrity. We will be transparent. We will be collaborative. And we will absolutely become the global leader in our field. Because we have the talent, we have the resources, and now we have the leadership." She leaned in her voice, dropping to a confidential, serious tone. "I know what you're thinking. Who am I? I'm the quiet wife. The woman in the background. Morgan Thorne made a mistake. He thought my silence was weakness. He thought my patience was stupidity. He learned too late that a quiet person is an observant person. I have watched this company for 10 years. I know where the bodies are buried. And I know where the treasure is too." She smiled. "The treasure is you." "I have one last piece of news," she said. "The Pinnacle Award the company won last night. I have already spoken to the Business Council. We are respectfully returning it." A gasp went through the room. "That award was given based on fraudulent numbers," Amelia said, her voice like steel. "It was given to a man, not a company. We will earn our own awards. We will earn them with real numbers, real products, and real integrity. The next time we are on that stage, it will be all of us, and it will be real." She stepped back from the podium. "I'm done talking. My new office is the glass conference room on the 40th floor. No more ivory tower. My door is open. Now, let's get to work." She walked off the stage, not to the thunder of a forced ovation, but to the determined, powerful applause of a company that had just been saved. As she walked through the lobby, she saw a final karmic detail. The Page 6 article was taped to the water cooler. The headline was devastating: from King to Con CEO Morgan Thorne, arrested for fraud after wife billionaire heir Amelia Van Houten stages corporate coup. The photo, the one of him and Isabella in handcuffs, was already global. Amelia walked past it without a second glance. She had a company to run, and so the reign of Morgan Thorne, built on ego and theft, collapsed in a single day. He learned the hard way that the loudest person in the room is often the most fragile, and that true power doesn't need to shout. Amelia Van Houten, the quiet wife, proved that silence is not weakness. It is the patience of a predator, the calm of a strategist. She took back her company, her name and her future, not by screaming, but by winning. The arrogant CEO who mocked his wife ended up with nothing, while the woman he called simple now runs his entire world. This story is a powerful reminder. Never ever underestimate the quiet ones. They are the ones who are always listening. What did you think of Morgan's downfall? Was it karma or was it just business? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching. If you loved this story of justice and karma, please show your support. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas every single week. Click that notification bell so you never miss a single story. He was a titan, a predator in a $10,000 suit, and she was the woman he paraded as a trophy. Gregory Lowe, a New York billionaire, decided to commit the ultimate act of disrespect, taking his young mistress to the city's most exclusive restaurant, Aura. He smirked as he texted his wife Jasmine a lie about a late board meeting. He thought she was at home, a dull accessory to his glittering life. But Gregory was about to learn a fatal lesson. Never underestimate the woman you've wronged. Because he didn't just bring his mistress to dinner. He brought her to the one place in the world his wife held all the power. The restaurant she owned. Gregory Lowe was a man who didn't just enter a room. He conquered it. His voice, a low baritone, accustomed to billion-dollar commands, was currently softened into a tone of practiced deceit. "It's a marathon, darling," he murmured into his phone, his reflection staring back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown office. Below him, New York glittered like a pile of diamonds he'd already pocketed. "The quarterly reports are a disaster. I'll be with the board until midnight at least. Don't wait up." He clicked the phone off without waiting for a reply, a small, cruel smirk playing on his lips. He straightened the knot of his silk tie. There was no board meeting. The only disaster was the fact that his wife Jasmine was so predictable, so tame. Jasmine Rivers Lowe. To the world, she was the impossibly elegant, quiet black woman on his arm at galas, the one with the soft smile and the art history degree. Gregory saw her as the final piece of his collection. He had the penthouse, the Patek Philippe, on his wrist, the private jet, and the beautiful placid wife. He had new money, low capital built on ruthless tech acquisitions, and she had old class, which he found both useful and increasingly boring. He checked his watch. 7:30 p.m. Kendra would be waiting. He slid his phone into his pocket and picked up his briefcase, then set it back down. He wasn't going to the office. He was going to dinner. He buzzed his assistant. "Helen, I'm out for the night. Cancel my morning, 9 a.m. As he stepped into the private elevator, he sent a different text. "On my way. Wear the red dress." The reply was instantaneous, a flurry of heart emojis from Kendra P. Kendra Pierce was everything Jasmine was not. She was loud, she was demanding, she was barely 24, and she was utterly transparently transactional. She didn't have class. She had a surgically enhanced body and an insatiable appetite for his Amex black card. She was a vulgar little trinket, and Gregory found her thrilling. Tonight, he was taking her to Aura. Aura was the single most difficult reservation to get in New York City. It was a temple of modernist cuisine, whispered about in culinary circles, famed for its 3-month waiting list and its unlisted phone number. Gregory had pulled strings called a contact, who called a friend, who knew a guy. He'd finally secured a table, a last-minute cancellation. It was a power move, the kind he relished. He couldn't wait to see the look on Kendra's face. He imagined her bright and gaudy against Aura's famously minimalist, expensive backdrop. It was a delightful contrast. Across town, in a brownstone that Gregory had paid for, but never truly seen, Jasmine Rivers Lowe powered down her own laptop. Her office was not a sterile glass box. It was warm, filled with books and antique maps. She had heard the lie in Gregory's voice, the slight oily smoothness that always appeared when he was deceiving her. "Don't wait up you," he'd said. "I won't," she whispered to the empty room. Jasmine was not placid. She was not tame. And she was certainly not stupid. The art history degree was real, but it hung next to her MBA from Wharton and her Grand Diplôme from Le Cordon Bleu. Her old class came with old money, a Rivers family trust that Gregory had never bothered to investigate, dismissing it as pin money. He had no idea. He had no idea that while he was building Low Capital, she had been building her own empire. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Matteo, her maitre d' at Aura. "He's on the list. Low Platz 1. 8:30 p.m. Table 12." As instructed. Jasmine looked at the text. She had founded Aura 3 years ago, under her maiden name, Jasmine Rivers. It was the crown jewel of the Rivers Hospitality Group, a company she owned outright. Gregory had never known. He paid no attention to the restaurant scene beyond what was trendy, and he certainly never paid attention to her little hobbies. He assumed she spent her days at spas and charity luncheons. She had seen the reservation for Gregory Lowe pop up 2 days ago. It wasn't a last-minute cancellation he'd snagged. It was a trap she had set. Her team had flagged his name the moment his contact had pathetically tried to pull strings. Jasmine had approved the reservation herself. Table 12, she mused. It was a good table, prominent, visible, in the center of the main dining room where the acoustics carried. She stood and walked to her closet. Gregory loved Kendra's red dress. Jasmine, she thought, would wear green, the color of money and envy. "He thinks he's taking his mistress out," she said to her reflection, a woman with intelligent eyes burning with a cold, controlled fire. "He has no idea he's bringing her to his execution." She put in her diamond earrings. They were a gift from her father, not her husband. "Matteo," she texted back. "Proceed as planned, and alert security. I have a feeling Mr. Lowe will be expressive tonight." The lobby of Aura was an exercise in weaponized minimalism. There was no gold, no gaudy chandeliers, just vast, echoing walls of polished grey travertine, a single dramatic spray of white orchids, and a discreet desk sculpted from a single block of black marble. The air smelled faintly of bergamot and old money. Gregory Lowe strode in Kendra Pierce, clamped to his arm. She was as promised in the red dress. It was backless, sleeveless, and clung to her like a desperate second skin. Her Birkin bag, a garish pink, a recent gift from Gregory, was swung conspicuously in her hand. "Wow, Greg," she whispered, her voice a little too loud for the space. "This place is quiet. Are you sure it's good?" "There's not even a sign." "It's not good, Kendra. It's the best," Gregory said, puffing his chest. He felt the eyes of the other patrons, quietly wealthy, tastefully dressed, flicker over Kendra's dress and then dismissively away. It only made him smirk. He loved disrupting their stale, old-world sensibilities. He marched to the desk where a tall, impossibly sharp man in a dark Tom Ford suit stood, his silver hair immaculate. This was Matteo. "Reservation," Gregory barked. "Low, 8:30. Matteo did not look up from his ledger immediately. He let the word hang in the silent air for a beat too long. Then slowly, he raised his eyes, his gaze cool and assessing. It lingered on Kendra for a fraction of a second before landing on Gregory. "Ah, yes, Mr. Lowe," Matteo said, his voice a smooth European blend that was impossible to place. "We have been expecting you. Your table for 2. "Of course," Gregory snapped, irritated by the man's calm. "The best table, I trust." "We have table 12 for you, sir," Matteo said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "This way." He led them into the main dining room. It was stunning. A 30-foot ceiling, walls of glass overlooking a private starlit garden, and tables spaced so far apart that every party was in its own private bubble. The silence was broken only by the quiet clink of silver and murmured conversation. Kendra was visibly impressed, her eyes wide. "Okay, this is fancy." Matteo led them, and led them. Past the plush booths, past the prime tables by the window, and settled them at table 12. It was, as Jasmine had noted, in the exact center of the room. It wasn't a bad table, but it was conspicuous. It felt less like a seat and more like a stage. "This is it," Gregory demanded, looking around. "I was told I'd have a window." "My apologies, Mr. Lowe," Matteo said, his tone still perfectly infuriatingly polite. "Our window tables are reserved 6 months in advance. We were simply delighted we could accommodate you at all on such short notice." The implication was clear. "You are lucky to be here." Gregory's eye twitched. He hated being told he was lucky. He made his luck. But Kendra was already sliding into the booth, her red dress bright against the muted grey velvet. "It's fine, Greggy," she cooed, sensing his mood. "Everyone can see us here. They probably know who you are." Gregory harumphed and sat down. A moment later, a young waitress named Sarah, her uniform, a chic charcoal grey sheath, appeared to pour their water. "Good evening. My name is Sarah, and I will be 2 glasses of your most expensive champagne." Gregory cut her off, not looking at her. "And the menus." "Right away, sir," Sarah said, her voice neutral. She filled their glasses with still water and vanished. "She seems stuck up," Kendra whispered, pulling out her phone to take a selfie, the flash startlingly bright in the dim room. A few heads turned, annoyance flashing on their faces. "Everyone here is stuck up," Gregory said, enjoying the disruption. "They're all just trust fund babies. We're the real power, baby." Kendra giggled and leaned over the table, pressing her chest forward. "Speaking of, what about your wife? What's, Jasmine doing tonight? Probably just, I don't know, cataloguing her beige shoe collection." Gregory let out a harsh laugh. "Something like that. Probably watching some boring documentary or rearranging the pantry. God, she's become such a housewife. It's sad, Kendra said, applying a layer of neon pink lip gloss. That's why you need me, to keep you exciting. She's just so dull. Dull as dishwater, Gregory agreed, raising his glass of water in a mock toast. Here's to a boring wife. It makes nights like this so much easier. Neither of them noticed the waitress, Sarah, standing just out of sight, her pen still. Neither of them saw Matteo at the podium, his eyes fixed on them. And neither of them had any idea that every word they said was being captured by a discreet microphone embedded in the table's centerpiece, piping their conversation directly to a private office on the 3rd floor. Upstairs, Jasmine Lowe listened, her face a mask of stone. She heard her husband's laugh, heard the mistress's casual, cruel dismissal. Dull as dishwater. She closed her eyes for a moment, the old familiar ache of his disrespect hardening into something new, something sharp. Okay, Matteo, she spoke into her own earpiece. He's settled. Let's begin phase 2. Slow the service and send the sommelier, the new one. The first 20 minutes of the meal were an exercise in subtle psychological warfare. The expensive champagne Gregory had demanded took 10 minutes to arrive. When it did, it was brought by a junior server, not the head sommelier. This is the Dom Perignon 2008, Gregory asked, inspecting the bottle with a novice's suspicion. Yes, sir, the server replied, already pouring. Let me taste it first, Gregory snapped, but the server had already filled Kendra's glass. A minor breach of etiquette, but one that made Gregory's skin prickle. Then came the menus. Aura was a tasting menu-only establishment. Mr. Lowe, Sarah said, returning to the table. Our menu this evening is a 12-course exploration of coastal ingredients. Are there any allergies the chef should be? I don't explore food. Gregory interrupted. I want a steak, a tomahawk, and she'll have the lobster. Sarah's smile was polite but firm. I'm afraid we don't offer an à la carte menu, sir. The tasting menu is the only experience Aura provides. That's ridiculous, Kendra chimed in. My Gregory is a billionaire. He can get a steak wherever he wants. Go tell your chef to make him one. I cannot do that, ma'am. Gregory leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing purr. Listen to me carefully, Sarah. I am Gregory Lowe. I am on the board of 3 major museums, and I could buy this building with my pocket change. If I want a steak, your chef will go to the nearest butcher, buy a steak, and cook it for me. Do you understand? Sarah's composure didn't crack. I understand your request, sir, but I cannot fulfill it. The owner, Ms. Rivers, is exceptionally strict about the integrity of the menu. Perhaps the Wagyu course will be to your liking. Ms. Rivers? Gregory scoffed. Who the hell is Ms. Rivers? Another stuck-up nobody, I assume. Fine, fine, bring the stupid tasting menu, but it had better be good, and I want another bottle of this champagne now. The meal began. Each course was a microscopic artistic creation. A single scallop with a yuzu foam, a quail egg nestled in a soil of black truffle. It was food designed to be contemplated. Gregory and Kendra hated it. This is it, Kendra said, poking at a delicate sliver of raw hamachi. It's baby food. It's pretentious garbage, Gregory agreed loudly. He was on his 3rd glass of champagne and feeling bullish. This is what happens when people with no real taste get money. The service, meanwhile, had slowed to a glacial pace. Their water glasses sat empty for 2, then 3 minutes at a time. The gap between the third and fourth course stretched to 25 minutes. Gregory was becoming visibly agitated. He felt ignored. Gregory Lowe, was being ignored. "This is a joke," he said, his voice rising. People at other tables were starting to look. "Where is that waitress? Sarah, get over here." Sarah appeared instantly. "Yes, Mr. Lowe. This is the worst service I have ever received in my life. This dump is a disgrace. The food is tiny, the service is slow, and you have an attitude." "I am very sorry you feel that way, sir." "Don't be sorry. Be better," he spat. "You know what I'm done with this. Just bring us the check. This whole meal is of course complimentary. I'm not paying a single dime for this insult." Kendra, emboldened by his anger, added, "Yeah, and this Ms. Rivers person should be thanking us for even coming here and giving her place some class." Sarah's expression finally flickered, a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening of her lips. "Sir, I am not authorized to comp a meal, especially not one that has been almost fully served." "Then get me someone who is," Gregory roared, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. The entire restaurant went silent. "Get me your manager. No, forget the manager. Get me the owner. Get me this Ms. Rivers right now. I want to tell her to her face that her restaurant is a failure and that I'm going to post a review on every platform that will shut her down by Monday. Now go." Sarah looked at him, her gaze suddenly cold. "As you wish, Mr. Lowe." She turned and walked not to the kitchen, but toward the grand staircase at the far end of the room. Gregory sat back, breathing heavily, a triumphant sneer on his face. "That's how you handle these people, Kendra. You show them who's boss. This Rivers woman is probably some terrified little hipster. She'll be down here begging for my forgiveness in 2 minutes." Kendra giggled and took a sip of champagne. "I can't wait to see her face, Greggy. Put her in her place." The restaurant remained deathly quiet. Every diner was watching their table. The air was thick with tension. Upstairs, Jasmine heard the slam. She heard the demand. She looked at her head of security, a large man named Robert, who was standing by her office door. She muted the audio feed and stood smoothing the lapels of her emerald green custom-tailored suit. "He's asking for the owner," she said, her voice calm. Robert nodded. "He is, ma'am." Jasmine walked to her full-length mirror. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon. Her makeup was flawless. She looked, she thought, not like a dull housewife. She looked like a CEO. "Well," she said, clasping her hands, "it would be rude to keep a customer waiting." The silence in the dining room stretched. Gregory was starting to feel the first prickle of doubt. The other diners weren't just glancing. They were staring. They looked less like witnesses and more like an audience. "What's taking so long?" he muttered. And then he heard it. A single sharp click of a heel on the marble staircase. Click, click, click. A figure began to descend. It was a woman. She moved with an unhurried, liquid grace that commanded attention. She was tall, dressed in a striking, deep green suit that seemed to absorb the light in the room. Her diamond earrings flashed. Kendra, who was reapplying her lipstick, looked up and her hand froze. Her mouth fell open. "Greg," she breathed, her voice suddenly small. "Greg, what is that?" Gregory turned. His heart, which had been pounding with rage, seemed to stop cold. The woman descending the stairs, her face a mask of serene, cold authority, was his wife. "Jasmine?" he choked out. The name was a question. a denial. What the hell are you doing here? Are you following me? Is this some pathetic jealous? Jasmine reached the bottom of the stairs. She didn't look at him. She looked at Matteo, who met her at the base. Matteo, she said, her voice clear and carrying perfectly in the hushed room. Is there a problem at table 12? Matteo inclined his head. Mr. Lowe was dissatisfied with his experience, Ms. Rivers. He found the service slow and the food pretentious garbage. He demanded to see the owner. He has also refused to pay. Gregory's mind was reeling, trying to process the name. Ms. Rivers. Ms. Rivers? He repeated, his voice a bewildered croak. Jasmine, stop this. Stop this insane game. Who is Ms. Rivers? Jasmine finally turned her gaze to him. It was not the soft, accommodating gaze of his wife. It was the flat, assessing stare of a shark. I am, she said. She walked calmly, deliberately to their table. She stood at its head, looking down at her husband and his mistress. I am Jasmine Rivers, owner, founder, and chief executive of Aura and the Rivers Hospitality Group. Kendra let out a small, strangled gasp. No, that's not... You're just his wife. Jasmine's eyes flicked to Kendra. It was the first time she had acknowledged her. And you must be the late board meeting, Jasmine said, her voice dripping ice. Kendra Pierce, your Instagram is very thorough. You really should set it to private when you're sleeping with a married man. It's just sloppy. Kendra's face, caked in makeup, turned a mottled, furious red. Gregory surged to his feet, his chair scraping violently. Jasmine, enough. I don't know what this is, some sick joke, some hobby you've been hiding, but you're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing us. Sit down, Gregory, Jasmine said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. To his own shock and the shock of everyone watching, he slowly, mechanically sat. You're not embarrassed. Jasmine continued, her voice low and dangerous. You're confused. You're a man who can only see the world in terms of price tags, and you never ever bothered to check mine. You own this, he stammered, gesturing around the opulent room. This how with my money? A dry, brittle laugh escaped Jasmine's lips. It was a sound Gregory had never heard before, and it terrified him. My God, your arrogance is bottomless. Your money, Gregory. You really thought the woman you married was just an accessory you picked up at a charity auction. She leaned in, placing her hands on the table. You thought I was dull as dishwater, didn't you? You thought I was at home, cataloguing my beige shoes. Those were your words, I believe. Gregory's blood ran cold. She had heard him. While you were busy building low capital, Jasmine said, her voice resonating with power, I was building this, the Rivers Hospitality Group. It includes Aura, 2 hotels in the Caribbean and a culinary institute in upstate New York. It's valued as of last quarter at $900 million. She paused, letting the number land. It was founded with my inheritance, the Rivers Trust, the pin money you always found so amusing. Gregory was speechless. He was drowning. Jasmine turned to Sarah, who was standing nearby holding a black leather billfold. Sarah, please give Mr. Lowe the check. Full price. That includes the 2 bottles of Dom Perignon, the 12-course menu for 2, and the... yes. The $8,000 bottle of Chateau Margaux he so loudly ordered from the sommelier, thinking it would impress his date. I didn't order that, Gregory protested weakly. You demanded the best red wine you have from our sommelier, Jasmine corrected him. He gave it to you. You drank it. You will pay for it. The total, Mr. Lowe, is 11,450. Kendra, finally finding her voice, let out a hysterical screech. You can't do this. You're still his wife. He'll divorce you and he'll take half of this dump. We'll take everything. Jasmine's smile was thin and sharp as a razor. Ah, she said. The divorce. Yes, let's talk about that. You see, Kendra, you really should have dated a smarter billionaire. A smarter billionaire. Gregory repeated, his voice hoarse. He felt a ringing in his ears. This was a nightmare. He was in his wife's restaurant, his secret, boring wife. Yes, Gregory. Smarter, Jasmine said, her calm voice cutting through his panic. Do you remember our prenuptial agreement, the one you were so proud of, the one your team of sharks at Adler and Croft drafted? He nodded, grasping at the first solid object in the churning sea of his confusion. I remember. It's ironclad. Ironclad. You get nothing of mine, Jasmine. Nothing from Low Capital. Nothing. Exactly, Jasmine said. It was a separate property agreement. What's yours is yours, and what's mine is mine. Her smile widened. You were so obsessed with protecting your new money from me, you never even considered that my old money might be worth protecting from you. The Rivers Hospitality Group is 100% mine. It's held in an irrevocable trust that my father established 20 years ago. In a divorce, you wouldn't get to touch a single beautifully designed, minimalist grey brick of it. Gregory stared at her. The woman he'd dismissed as a glorified decorator, a soft-spoken companion, was laying out a financial strategy that was as ruthless as any of his own. So you see, Jasmine continued, turning her gaze back to the mistress, he can't take half, he can't take any, but the divorce is just the appetizer. Kendra, who had been listening with growing horror, pushed back from the table. You're a bitch. A crazy, lying bitch. I'm a lot of things, Jasmine said, her voice dangerously quiet. I'm a cordon bleu trained chef. I'm a Wharton MBA. I'm the CEO of a $900 million company. But the one thing I'm not is your husband's fool. He is your fool, Kendra. Greg, do something, Kendra shrieked, tugging on his sleeve. Don't let her talk to me like that. Tell her. Gregory looked from Kendra's desperate painted face to Jasmine's cold, triumphant one. He was a man famous for his boardroom ambushes for his hostile takeovers. And he had just walked blindfolded and arrogant into the most spectacular ambush of his life. Jasmine, please, he tried, attempting to shift his tone to the one he used for negotiation. Listen, honey. We can talk about this. At home. This is a mistake. The only mistake, Jasmine said, was yours. You mistook my kindness for weakness. You mistook my silence for ignorance. For 10 years, Gregory I have watched you lie. I have watched you cheat. I have smiled at your galas while you texted women like her under the table. I have listened to you belittle my intelligence, my family, and my hobbies. And tonight, you brought your filth into my house. Her voice dropped, and for the first time, a tremor of pure white-hot fury entered it. You demanded to see the owner. Here I am. You demanded to know why the service was slow. It was slow because I told them to. I wanted you to sit here. I wanted you to stew in your own arrogance. I wanted you to get loud. I wanted every single person in this room to see exactly who you are. She gestured around the room. The other diners, captains of industry, old money families, renowned artists, were all watching their faces a mixture of shock and on some quiet admiration. This is entrapment, Gregory sputtered, his face turning a blotchy purple. You tricked me. I did no such thing, Jasmine said. I simply approved your reservation. You did the rest all by yourself. You were rude to my staff. You insulted my food, and you refused to pay your bill. She nodded to Sarah, who stepped forward and placed the leather billfold on the table. Pay your bill, Gregory. Gregory looked at the bill, then at Jasmine. And if I don't, what will you do? Call the police on your own husband. Think of the scandal, Jasmine. Think of your reputation. Jasmine's cold smile returned. Oh, Gregory, you poor, stupid man. You still think this is about a restaurant bill. You still think this is about your reputation. She shook her head, a look of almost genuine pity on her face. This was never about the bill. This was never even about her, she said, flicking a hand at Kendra. This is about you, and the fact that you just lost everything. Gregory's brow furrowed. What are you? I haven't lost anything. Low capital is stronger than ever. I'll pay the damn bill. He reached for his wallet, his hands shaking with rage. I'll pay it, and then I'm leaving, and my lawyers will see you in the morning. I don't think they will, said a new voice. A man in a sharp, conservative suit had approached the table unnoticed. He was older, with sharp eyes and a briefcase. He looked like a predator of a different kind, a legal one. Mr. Lowe, the man said. My name is Ben Carter. I'm legal counsel for Ms. Rivers and the Rivers Hospitality Group. But I'm also here on behalf of, well, your former colleagues. My former... Jasmine stepped back as if to give the man room to work. Gregory, she said, you were right about one thing. You were at a board meeting tonight, or at least one was happening about you. The blood drained from Gregory Lowe's face, leaving it a sickly, waxy grey. A board meeting, he whispered. Mr. Carter set his briefcase on an adjacent empty table and clicked it open. Yes, Mr. Lowe. An emergency board meeting. It was convened at 8:00 p.m. this evening, while you were complaining about the champagne. That's not possible, Gregory said, shaking his head. I'm the chairman. I'm the majority shareholder. They can't meet without me. Oh, they can, Jasmine said, her voice light, when the meeting is called to investigate credible allegations of massive corporate fraud, embezzlement, and misappropriation of assets, all filed by, well, me. You. Gregory's voice cracked. You don't know anything about my business. Don't I? Jasmine replied. You forgot, Gregory. As your dull wife, I was also the default signatory on your household accounts, the accounts you got very sloppy with. Carter pulled out a thick, spiral-bound document. For the last 6 months, Mr. Lowe, you have been diverting funds from Lowe Capital's corporate accounts to pay for a, shall we say, personal expense. A $4 million condominium at 15 Central Park West, for instance. A lease on a 2025 Maserati. Multiple Birkin bags. He tapped the document. You've been funneling company money, shareholder money, to Ms. Pierce here. You disguised them as consulting fees and client entertainment. But the SEC has a very specific and very boring definition of client. And Ms. Pierce doesn't fit it. Kendra, who had been watching this like a tennis match, suddenly looked terrified. What? I didn't do anything. He gave me those things. They were gifts. They were stolen dear, Jasmine said, not even looking at her. Jasmine, you wouldn't. Gregory pleaded, his voice now a desperate rasp. You wouldn't. This is our life. This is my company. You would destroy me, destroy yourself over a fling. Jasmine's face hardened into granite. A fling. You call 10 years of humiliation a fling. No, Gregory. This isn't about jealousy. This is about justice. You're a thief. You stole from your company, you stole from your shareholders, and you stole 10 years of my life. I am just balancing the books. Carter cleared his throat. The board has voted Mr. Lowe unanimously. As of 9:15 p.m., you have been removed as chairman and CEO of Lowe Capital effective immediately. Your assets have been frozen pending a full investigation by the SEC, who received an anonymous tip with a very thorough dossier of evidence this afternoon. My assets. Gregory stumbled back, gripping the table for support. His empire, his life's work, gone in an hour. The board has also enacted the morality clause in your contract. Carter continued, his voice a monotone dirge. Which means you are not entitled to a severance package. You are not entitled to your golden parachute. You forfeit all unvested stock options. You, Mr. Lowe, are ruined. Gregory stared, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. The Patek Philippe on his wrist, which he'd always seen as a symbol of his power, suddenly felt like a heavy, useless shackle. He looked at Jasmine. She was watching him, her eyes bright and unforgiving. She had done this. This woman he'd ignored, cheated on, and dismissed. She had dismantled his entire world, piece by piece, right under his nose. And she had used his own arrogance as the weapon. Kendra, seeing the entire picture with devastating clarity, began to panic. The money was gone. The condo, the car, it was all tied to him. I didn't know, she cried, backing away from the table. I didn't know any of this. He told me it was fine. I have to go. She grabbed her pink Birkin bag and made a dash for the exit. Oh, one more thing, Ms. Pierce, Jasmine called after her. Kendra froze her hand on the door. The condo at 15 Central Park West, Jasmine said. It was a corporate lease from Lowe Capital, since Mr. Lowe is no longer with the company. That lease has been terminated. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. And do leave the Birkin. It's company property. Kendra's face crumpled. She let out a sound of pure, animalistic rage and threw the $50,000 bag at Jasmine. Jasmine didn't flinch. She simply sidestepped it. The bag hit the marble floor with a dull, expensive thud. Robert, Jasmine said calmly. Her head of security, who had been standing by the stairs, moved forward. Please escort Miss Pierce out. She's finished with her meal. Kendra, sobbing and screaming, You'll pay for this. Both of you, was firmly guided out of the restaurant, her red dress a streak of shame disappearing into the night. The dining room was a vacuum. The hysterical fading sobs of Kendra Pierce had left a ringing silence in their wake. The only sounds were the distant polite clink of a fork on a plate from a far corner and the ragged, shallow breathing of Gregory Lowe. He was a statue of a broken man, a monument to his own downfall. His hands, which had signed billion-dollar deals and dismissed 1,000 underlings, were flat on the table as if to stop it from spinning. His $10,000 suit, his armor, looked like a cheap costume. The blotchy purple of his rage had faded to a sickly, waxy gray. He was a man who had been hollowed out, and every diner in the room was a witness to the void. He stared at Jasmine, his mind a broken abacus, frantically trying to make the numbers add up. He saw the woman he had married, but the image was superimposed with this new, terrifying reality. The quiet, art-loving woman he'd left at home was gone. In her place stood this architect, this strategist who had just conducted a public demolition of his entire life. He couldn't reconcile the two. He searched her face for a crack, for a hint of the dull wife. He knew a sign of regret, of fear, of something familiar. He found nothing but a serene, cold clarity. His voice, when it finally came, was unrecognizable, a dry, hoarse whisper. Why? It was the only word he had left. Why? All this? He gestured weakly at the room, the staring diners, the legal documents. The restaurant. The public humiliation. Why not just file for divorce? Why? This. Jasmine, who had been watching him with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen, moved. She bent gracefully and picked up the garish pink Birkin bag from the floor. She inspected its crocodile skin. For scuffs, her expression one of faint distaste, as if handling a piece of trash. She turned and handed it to Matteo, who had materialized at her elbow. "Matteo," she said, her voice crisp and clear. "Please have this sent to Mr. Richardson, the new interim CEO of Low Capital. I believe it belongs in their asset forfeiture department. Have it sanitized first." She turned back to Gregory. Her eyes, which he had once found placid, were now 2 chips of brilliant, unforgiving ice. "Why?" she repeated, as if tasting the word. "You don't get to ask why anymore, Gregory. You're a bully. And bullies are at their core cowards. They don't understand quiet departures. They don't respect lawyers' letters. They only understand one thing: power. Brute force. Public domination." She took a step closer to the table, leaning in. "You had to see me take yours. You had to feel it. You had to sit here in my house, a place I built from nothing but my own skill and my own money, and you had to watch me beat you. Not just in a divorce. I had to beat you at your own game." Her voice dropped thick with the weight of a decade of suppressed fury. "For 10 years you've treated me like a line item in your budget. The wife. Something to be maintained at minimal cost. Remember the gala for the museum? When you told Mr. Henderson, I dabbled in art as if I were a child finger painting, all while I was quietly sitting on the acquisitions board he'd been trying to get on for a decade. You didn't just ignore me, Gregory. You went out of your way to make me small so you could feel big." She stood up straight again, the moment of heat passing replaced by a chilling finality. "You built an empire of paper and lies. It was a house of cards. I built one of stone and integrity, and stone Gregory always wins. I didn't humiliate you. I simply pulled back the curtain and let the world see the fraud you've always been." Gregory's head sank. He had no defense. She was right. He had seen her as nothing, and she had been everything. Jasmine let the silence settle, then gave a sharp, decisive clap of her hands, as if closing a ledger. The sound made him jump. "Now," she said, her tone shifting, all passion gone, replaced by the brisk, impersonal voice of a proprietor. "There is still the matter of the bill. Gregory looked up, his eyes wide, with a new, pathetic kind of bewilderment. The bill, he stammered. You just took my entire company. You just told me my assets are frozen. I can't pay this. I have nothing. He was pleading now. Gregory Lowe, was begging. He was looking for mercy, for her to be the old Jasmine, the one who paid the household accounts, the one who smoothed things over. Jasmine's expression remained impassive. That is indeed a problem. I run a business, Mr. Lowe, and Aura does not accept excuses in place of payment. My staff, who you so crudely insulted, expect to be paid. Jasmine, for God's sake, he cried, his voice cracking. Be reasonable. A ghost of a smile, thin and sharp as a shard of glass, touched her lips. Reasonable? She asked. Was it reasonable to lie to me tonight about a late board meeting? Was it reasonable to call my life's work, this very room, a pretentious dump? Was it reasonable to use your shareholders' money to fund your pathetic, tacky little affair? No, Gregory. I don't think I'll be reasonable. The time for reason is long past. But, she added, her eyes narrowing slightly, I am practical. Her gaze dropped from his face to his left wrist. That Patek Philippe, she said, her voice clinically precise. It's a Nautilus, isn't it? Reference 5711, rose gold. Black-brown dial. Market value is, what, $90,000 on a bad day. Gregory's hand flew instinctively to his watch, a reflexive, protective gesture. No, he whispered. Not this. This was my father's. It was his last pathetic lie. And Jasmine, he realized with dawning horror, knew it. Her laugh was not a laugh. It was a cold, dry puff of air. Your father's was stainless steel. A 1978 Calatrava, with a simple white face and a black leather strap. It was a beautiful, modest, elegant watch. For a beautiful, modest, elegant man. You sold it 3 years ago to fund a stock margin call you'd hidden from me. She pointed a finger at his wrist. This you bought yourself when you closed the hostile takeover of Apex Industries. You came home drunk on champagne and arrogance, and you told me it was your shark watch, a trophy, a symbol of your real self. She leaned, in her voice a predatory whisper. Well, the shark has been definned, and the trophy is forfeit. She signaled to Robert, her security guard, who had been standing silent as a statue by the staircase. Mr. Lowe will be settling his $11,450.80 bill. In trade, she said clearly. Robert, please accept his watch as collateral. I'm sure we can arrange to have it appraised and auctioned by morning. We'll send him the difference, assuming he has a forwarding address. No! Gregory roared. It was a raw, primal sound of pure desperation. This was the last piece of him. He lunged, not at Jasmine, but across the table, trying to protect the watch, to protect the last vestige of the man he was. You vulture! He never had a chance. Robert intercepted him easily, not with a punch, but with a simple neutralizing grip on his forearm. The strength was immense, the movement bored and efficient. It was the way one would handle a drunk or a hysterical child. Sir, Robert said, his voice a low, calm rumble. Don't make this more difficult. Please, remove the watch. Gregory struggled for a moment, his face purple, his suit jacket bunching at his shoulders. But it was useless. He was pinned by the man's grip, by the weight of 100 staring eyes, by the unmovable force of his wife's will. Defeat, total and absolute, flooded his system. The fight drained out of him, leaving a hollow, shaking shell. He slumped. With his free hand, his fingers trembling violently, he fumbled with the clasp. It took him 2 tries. The watch, $90,000 of rose gold and arrogance, came free. It felt impossibly heavy. He let it fall from his fingers onto the table, where it landed with a dull, final, expensive clack. Robert released his arm. With a practiced motion, he picked up the Patek, wrapped it in a clean linen napkin from the table, and pocketed it without a glance. "Thank you for your patronage, Mr. Lowe," Jasmine said. Her voice was formal, as if addressing any other customer. "Your business here is concluded. Mr. Carter will be in touch with your lawyer, assuming you can still afford one, regarding the divorce proceedings. And the SEC, I'm sure, will be in touch about everything else." She straightened her jacket. "Get out of my restaurant." Gregory Lowe stood up. His legs felt like cement. He was no longer a titan. He was just a man in a rumpled suit with a pale, naked wrist. He looked around the room. He saw the faces of people he'd played golf with, people he'd intimidated in boardrooms, people he'd dismissed as old money relics. They were all staring at him, their expressions a chilling mixture of cold pity, detached curiosity, and undisguised contempt. He had to walk. Every step from the center of the room to the Travertine lobby was an eternity. The silence was his exit music. He could feel every single pair of eyes on his back. He didn't look at Jasmine again. He couldn't. He pushed through the heavy front doors, which closed behind him with a quiet, final, definitive thud. The dining room remained perfectly still for a beat, the tension still vibrating in the air. And then from a corner table, an elderly woman, draped in pearls and quiet generational wealth, began to clap. It wasn't a loud, raucous sound. It was a slow, measured, deliberate applause. A man at another table, a well-known tech investor, saw it and joined in. Then another diner, and another. Within seconds, the entire dining room. This collection of New York's most powerful and discerning had risen to their feet. They were not cheering a spectacle. They were in their own restrained, powerful way, anointing a new queen. Jasmine Rivers stood alone in the center of the room, the epicenter of the storm she had unleashed and controlled. She looked around, her composure perfect, and gave a single, gracious nod. A small, genuine smile finally touched her lips. It was a smile of release. She turned, ignoring the billfold, the leftover champagne, and the wreckage of her husband's life. She walked not with the frantic energy of a victor, but with the calm purpose of a woman with work to do. She ascended the grand staircase. She didn't go to her office. She went to the private 3-bedroom apartment she kept on the top floor, an apartment Gregory never knew existed. She bypassed the living room and walked straight out onto the massive terrace. The cool, late October night air hit her face sharp and clean. Below her, New York glittered a vast, indifferent ocean of light. She heard her phone, which she'd left on an outdoor table, begin to buzz. It was Carter, likely with an update. It would be followed by the new CEO. It would be followed by her PR team, who were already spinning the narrative. It was the sound of her new life, a complex, powerful machine she had built and set in motion. She ignored it. She stood at the glass railing, looking down at the city that was now finally truly hers. She reached up and one by one began to pull the pins from her sleek, tight chignon. The heavy dark hair tumbled down, falling over the shoulders of her emerald green suit. She took a deep breath, inhaling the cold air of her freedom. She was not Mrs. Gregory Lowe. She was not a housewife. She was not an accessory, a hobbyist, or dull as dishwater. She was Jasmine Rivers, and she was just getting started. Karma isn't just a concept. It's a bill that always comes due. Gregory Lowe learned that the hard way. He thought his wife was an asset to be managed, but she was the CEO he never saw coming. He walked into her world dripping with arrogance and walked out with nothing but the suit on his back. This story is a powerful reminder. Never ever underestimate the people you think you've figured out. The quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. What did you think of Jasmine's ultimate revenge? Was it too harsh, or was it a perfectly served dish of cold, hard justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories where karma delivers the final devastating blow, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama every week. Don't miss what's coming next.